So let me ask this, dude, because we talked a little bit about this, and this is something that there's so many perspectives. It's the whole issue right now with the $10,000 forgiveness.
Oh
on
yeah,
some student loans.
Hey, current events.
And so one of the things, like a common thing you might hear is, like a meme might say something like this: if your college degree doesn't have enough value for you to pay it off, it certainly doesn't have enough value for me to pay it off. Okay, now, first of all, I'm going to dismiss the second part of that, doesn't have enough value for me to pay it off, because that gets into a lot of things of like, where do our taxes go? Is it appropriate?
Well, that's like the rugged individualism, like selfish,
and so
let's one big hole.
Not talk about like that aspect at all, because you're just, that's missing a crucial point, period. And it's so complicated, first of all. I mean, like any issue, this is so complicated.
Well, but in one way, it's not complicated, right? I mean, we all live on this earth. We have to share something. This is how we share. If we don't like it, as they would probably tell me, you are welcome to leave the country.
Oh, yeah, well, but I mean, yeah.
But I don't want to, because it makes me angry.
I mean, the thing is, I mean, the value, okay, where that money goes. So, I mean, are we taxed too much? Certainly, it's actually easy for me to say, yes, we are. But I like benefits of communal things, like roads. Yeah. I like that. Okay. So...
but you're right. It's
but
not,
where does that money go? I mean, there's lots of debates. And do we overspend money? This one guy, actually, I have like a thing too. He kind of was going off on it on the side of, he was supporting the $10,000. Like, he liked it. And he said... he told a story about your tax dollars going to waste, and talked about like wasting, like he was in the military and they had whatever kind of like drill, and then like after they had 5,000 rounds of ammunition left over that they, because of rules, they can't take back, so they just stayed out there and then played shooting whatever they.
I love it when ex-military guys complain about the things the military.
Yeah, and so it's like, and then gosh, dude, I just looked. Like, our military budget is like 800 in 2021, 801, I think it was, $1 billion. Well, that's more than $2 billion a day.
And just to like precede all of that, I mean, I was reading this article about abundance and scarcity mindsets, and my limitations to having an abundance mindset I've always been, but money wouldn't have value if it was of unlimited abundance. So I get stuck on thinking all resources are infinitely abundant when I'm an ecologist, and I know that except for the sun's energy, nothing is infinite. Mm-hmm. It's all limited. And so if it's limited, and if it's not limited, it doesn't have any value. Yep. Right? So if you tell me there's infinite amounts of money for everybody to have billions of dollars, then that day money becomes not a currency anymore. You don't use it. People are like, I'm not going to take that because I have money of it. I'm not going to give you anyway. So that's hard for me. But they were basically saying, but banks, if you look at what they do, all they do is print money nonstop. And so in effect, money is abundant, is infinitely abundant, because when we need it, they just make more. Yeah. So, I mean, that sort of supersedes this whole argument of any of it being limiting in the first place. If it's all infinitely abundant, then why not give us a bunch of it?
Yeah, well, and I mean, part of it, and then we have to question ourselves on our own consumerism. And I mean, you and I both are fortunate, that we have very nice homes to live in. We have plenty of material things. Do we need all of those things?
Yeah, I mean, it's true.
Do we have things beyond necessity? But at the same time, and this actually I think is perfect, because it leads back into
Sweet.
If your college degree doesn't have enough value for you to pay it off, it certainly doesn't have enough value for me to pay it off. So the point is, if your college degree doesn't have enough value for you to pay it off, stop it. What somebody studies should, It's like, just because,
it doesn't have to have a job and a financial value, and it's not only measured.
And it's like, okay, yes, we need a military in terms of we can't let chaos take over. Okay, so do I think there's no actual borders? But for the sake of the way the world is, there are countries. We can't let one country just start willy-nilly. Russia attacking Ukraine. I want to call it the Ukraine. Attacking Ukraine.
The Russia.
The Russians. You can't I mean, we can't just let willy-nilly.
I would argue that we can, but I get why we think we can't.
Like, you mean, who's we, though, there? The United States?
The entire world. Yeah, sure.
Or the rest of the world?
Yeah, I mean, what's going to happen? We stop having a military and then they're going to come rape us?
Right, yeah.
That's what we think is going to happen.
Oh, yeah,
I would
okay.
argue maybe that's not.
You're saying...
maybe we could not have a military and everything would be fine.
Yeah, right.
We don't know that.
Okay, right. So it's... But
not I get why we are afraid of...
Okay, so... But I mean, okay. So you can see, like, okay, we have to have some sort of thing to not let violence, stealing, whatever... Because those are all forms.
I believe in laws.
Yeah, right. So you got to have... Because, well, we've talked about this, dude. Because anarchy that works has rules. They just don't... They're not written down.
Yeah, they're definitely...
Like, you can't...
Global values and laws and norms. All those things are important. But what they are is where we get...
Something... And then we have to find a way to meet our needs. Okay? Food, water, shelter, right? Okay, and clothing. I mean, let's put clothing.
Oh yeah, this is exactly what I wanted to talk about today originally.
So there's all this, and the thing is, and all that, we produce enough food in the world for everyone to eat. Okay, now how we produce it, that could be questioned,
and how it's divvied up.
And how we produce it can be questioned because of are we raping the earth beyond capacity and repair? Okay, that can be questioned. And then the problem is how it's divvied up. Okay, so that's why people are still starving. Not because it's not available.
Right.
Okay. Now, again, should it be available because maybe we shouldn't be able to produce that much? That's up for that's up for argument. Yeah. Okay, but right now we make enough.
Right.
Okay. And then there's clearly, dude, somehow we need to find a better way for homeless people that want a home. Because now a homeless person that doesn't want a home...
Well, that's the same issue, right? There's enough places. There's enough home resources, just like there's enough food resources to house everyone. They're just not...
Okay. Yes, we need jobs and things like in Caddyshack. Judge Smells like, well, the world needs ditch diggers too, Danny. Yes, we need ditch diggers, which probably makes really good money actually now. But
no doubt, right?
They and good for them. But there's nothing wrong. Like, why do we have any of this if we don't have music and poetry and art? And dance, and if we get zero amount of the expression of life and love, because those are all expressions of love or life. In love and life, that's the same thing. That's the same thing. Okay,
it should be.
It is, and fundamentally it is. Okay, and then if you want to study that, in order to share that better with other people, which most likely you do, right? And then the job factor in it. Yeah, some job. Why do teachers not make as much money as the ditch digger made?
These are all high level that don't have anything to do with student loans in college.
Right. Yes. So it has nothing to do with that.
Which is funny. That's what gets me about all this is to watch these people argue about these issues when they should be arguing about... I'm happy to listen to you complain and be violent about issues that are like 5 or 6 levels above what you're talking about. But you're talking about minutia that has nothing to do... Anyway.
Yep. Yeah. It's kind of interesting the way we can skew our anger and frustration on points. The symptoms,
of a problem.
Then trying to get down to root. And then like an example, I just thought this was really interesting. Somebody... was writing about it, and it's like, because another thing that you'll see like commonly is just like, take a loan, here's the solution, take a loan, pay it back. Okay, a fair loan, yes.
There should be no interest on, and I don't even think college should be free. I think there should just be no interest on the loans.
Yeah, and and like the one person he was going through, and basically from what they started loaning and had been paying.
Oh yeah,
owed more still.
Look at the amortization on a mortgage.
Yes.
I think about what we do with real estate investment. I sit at to those tables and I talk to those people, and all I do is look at people that make a crap ton of money for doing nothing. No. The only service they're providing, Don't even. I mean, and I love these people. They're my friends. They're,
Yep.
But their jobs have no function besides the role the position that they are empowered to hold. A realtor, they have to exist in order to complete a transaction. They walk away with 3% of the total of that transaction. $3,000 on 100,000. I don't want to like get insulting to real. The bankers. What have they done? What have they done besides have a role at a bank to talk to a person that presumably is considered a good risk that will then go back to the bank and go, I can make you a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what if the
Well, yeah, and so that's
because
where,
of the interest and because of the fees and because of the chunks that we take out of all these transactions that we all have to make
yeah.
on a daily basis.
And then that's where then the problem lies, where somebody then, okay, again, like, because we're not trying to pick on bankers or realtors or any of those people.
Yeah,
but
that's
because you are doing a job. Okay, you are doing a job.
And the fact that job exists is not their fault.
And it's not their fault. And so they're not like necessarily producing a need of life. Okay, so man, we got to get that Maslow thing.
Yeah, right.
We got to get.
Right.
I will have that.
I mean,
by next show, we're having the Maslow thing on the wall.
They don't need to exist. I mean, these things only exist as transactional
Yeah.
money generating.
Right. Okay. And then worse than that is at least those people are participating where somebody that has just invested in something and expects money back.
Yeah. Well,
Minus,
arguably, I'm just as bad.
Yeah.
I mean, as the real estate investor in that triangle, I'm just the dumbest one.
Well, you are responsible. You are responsible at least for your loan. To pay your loan.
Well, oh yeah,
Like, do you know what I mean?
but I pass that responsibility on to my tenants.
Well, and then you could.
But I'm on the hook for it.
You're on the hook for it, right?
Legally.
Whereas, yeah,
And that's why I've been chosen among the vast amount of people who can't do that.
Yep.
Because they don't have enough money or they're not white enough or whatever. So yeah, there's a whole lot of things wrong with it.
Yeah, like on the economic disadvantage side, yeah, for somebody.
So again, these are higher level issues of things that shouldn't, not everything has. It's like, what if I told you? What if we were like, hey, let's do this video series, and I was like, well, okay, but I want $25 an hour. Mm-hmm. You just feel like, well, I don't even like you anymore. But yet we do it on a daily basis with, I want to go to college. Okay, well, it's going to cost you a ridiculous amount of money, and then since you don't have that money, I'm going to charge you even more on top of that to put it in my pocket, which is a super ridiculous amount of money. Are you cool with that? And we go, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
How?
Well, and then more so, okay, then I think, and then the next layer of that, or maybe whatever, within the layers of that is a problem. Okay, so fine, you're getting paid for that job. And that job, I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, my buddy's like, audits. I was like,
yeah, right.
Yeah. But I was like, good for you, but what? But so,
but again, not his fault that exists.
Right.
And he was smart enough to go, this is easy money.
Yeah, and so I mean, it's a job, money. Right? I mean, and he's kind of locked into it. But so for the reasons we get locked into things,
yeah.
But then so more so even than that job, there's the stadium out in Los Angeles is SoFi Stadium, which is a student loan thing, and they have enough money to sponsor a stadium, which is not $1 million.
And so,
like, I bet it's. out in Los Angeles? I'm gonna see.
Well, you're getting at what I think is like the simple solution to this whole thing is you shouldn't be able you shouldn't be allowed, and this is going to be super controversial, to make that much money off of money.
Right.
That sort of profit margin, like insurance. If it's something that's deemed a service in some way, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to sell a fidget spinner for $50,000 if somebody's going to pay $50,000 for a fidget spinner. That doesn't hurt anybody,
right?
Except the idiot that's going to buy it. But these service things that fall under this umbrella of what people are arguing. There's this guy on Medium that's making this pretty strong argument that housing is a fundamental human need, therefore that it shouldn't be profitable. And I'm like, wow, I'm angry about that because I'm in the business of making money off of housing. But at the same time, I would vote for that. I would give up what I do if that was going to be a universal thing.
So let's just, before we go on from that, let's just talk about that. So say that again. So he said This is
housing,
super good.
just like food, well, shelter, right?
Yep.
I mean, what are the basic human needs? Like, food, water, and shelter, right?
Yep.
So he's basically saying, let's bring shelter back into this ring. Like, we're pretty sympathetic. We show a commercial of a bunch of skinny Ethiopian kids, and you're going to send $50 to Suzanne Summers or whatever to feed those kids. But if you show a bunch of homeless people, you're like, ugh, they're gross.
And so this is the way somebody said this. Rent is a tax that. So this is perfect, dude. As I read this, tell me where you're at on the feeling scale.
I'm probably going to be in two places.
Yes.
Simultaneously.
Rent is a tax that poor people pay to rich people for the right to live in society.
Yeah,
and then the follow-up thing says each year Americans pay $512 billion in rent. That's money earned by the labor and transferred to those who own property because they own property.
Right.
Okay. So where are you at on the feeling?
Yeah, well, about two places. Because, and this is the conundrum of my life right now, that I'm actually waking up in the middle of the night sort of feeling the energetic dissonance. Because I don't think there should be huge profit margins on living. I'm sympathetic. I'm like, it makes me sad to think that. Like, I talked to a woman last night who had to leave her home, and she was like, can you just like listen to me for a minute? And I did. She didn't want to move, but she had to, because I had to raise the rent, because I bought an apartment that was paid for, that the people had been under renting for years because they were very sympathetic landlords. I mean, this woman paid $400 a month since like 1975. Her rent hadn't gone up.
Right.
That's not capitalist.
She was probably paying a lot back in 75 even, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it was like, and I don't know how long. And everybody else's rent, the woman who was managing it didn't have the heart to charge more, and their rents are about half. Yep. And then we bought the property, and if we had collected all those rents from everybody paying what they paid, we wouldn't have even been able to pay the mortgage.
Right.
What am I supposed to do?
Yeah. Right.
What was she now in the grand scheme of things, if Blackhawk or whoever had come in and bought that, they would have kicked everybody out that week and upped the rent 3 times.
Yeah.
But now, so I'm a bad guy, but I'm not the baddest guy. So I mean, I feel bad, but at the same time, it's real. And what should I beat myself up for? Not wanting to lose money or even being in the game. It's sort of like, should you be mad at a college student for taking a loan and going to college just because they didn't know any better? Yeah. Is it really their fault? Can you really get mad at them and say
so much pressure to go?
Is it anybody's fault? Is it somebody's fault who's 50, an alcoholic, going to have a heart attack, smokes because they got a good job and make really good money? Is it their fault? Should I take care of them when they have to go to the hospital because they have a heart attack because they're so stressed out about having to be rich? It's the same thing. I mean, like you would say, it's the same thing.
Yep.
So these people that are saying, I bet you anything, they're going to have a heart attack. They're the overeaters. They're obese. They got all these COPD and all these problems of living this lifestyle of chasing money. They're the ones telling the college student, if you can't get a job, then you shouldn't take the loan. Okay, well, why am I going to pay your healthcare bills? You know? So yeah, it makes me really mad, but it makes me really sympathetic at the same time. And again, 3 stories up, we shouldn't be making money off of these sort of transactions.
Right. Well, and then, so beyond that, because that's it exactly, it'd be one thing, so your mortgage would be one thing if you just had to pay the money back, not the interest rate.
Well, and insurance and all these other things too, but yeah.
Yep, so. Right. Because that makes like such a monumental difference. Because I always laugh, like for my house payment, you know, like the bank is like, oh, you know, you're going to borrow this kind of money, and here's what you owe, and to pay that back. And then it's like, well, and here's the interest on top of that.
Right. So you you pay $1,000 for your rent or whatever, and you look at it, and only like $50 goes to the principal.
Right.
$950. And sure, that gets better towards the end. The most depressing thing a person can look at is not like the fact that they're actually going to get cancer and die next year or whatever. It's an amortization table on a loan.
Yep.
It's the most depressing thing.
It's ridiculous.
And so this whole real estate thing, like and the same thing with colleges now, only exist so that rich people can get richer. I mean, or they don't exist for that reason, but they have been taken over And I think you could probably take that model of rich people taking over systems to produce more money and apply it pretty much carte blanche across
hospitals, we see that
everything.
super
right?
big in our
this
area
this is
here.
the last 50 years of our building off of rich white plantation owners, going back to pharaohs in Egypt, going back to whenever somebody decided that I'm better than you. And we're not all part of the one big whole.
Right.
And there's no unit of mind, and that we're separate and all this stuff like that. That just created this. And,
Yep.
and that's the Bible, right? Isn't that what the Bible's trying to tell us? It should be.
I'd say it is. Yeah, I mean, I know we miss meanings, clearly. So, the thing that gets me, I feel as though a lot of people are so trapped in this game then, because it's like, well, I would like to have a house and I want to do this.
And there's no choice.
Yeah.
I want to go to college.
Right. And you're looked down on. Honestly, I'd say it's practically looked down on. Like, well, you're not going to go to college. Well, what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
There's no choice.
And it's
it's a desperate.
Yeah.
So that's, and just like everything else, like the not to talk about housing, but you look at the articles about housing, and people are going, "You're an idiot if you bought a home this year." And poor people that did buy a home and paid too much for it, and who knows if that's going to end up like 2008 or if it's going to be fine in the future. It's not. They're not stupid. They're desperate.
Mm-hmm.
They really felt like their back was up against the wall and they had no choice. I mean, I don't see people flippantly, I don't see a 25-year-old young couple that's just had a baby flippantly taking out one of these loans that they could potentially ruin their lives. They honestly feel like they have to do that. That is you can trace that back to some agenda, right? Conspiracy theory number one of this domestication process. They're just doing what they're supposed to do, what they're taught.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the way our systems have been
They're
working.
they're a good cog in the wheel.
So, right, yeah. And then this is so when people, I think a lot of people just initially get a flicker of anger with something like, well, that's a systemic whatever problem, systemic racism, and it's like, well, no, that's what that is, though. It's like, that's what we mean by systemic. Like, it's beyond, it's not the individual, it's rooted in these systems.
Right, and you can't be mad. Well, the beauty of that is it removes the anger, it removes your capacity to pinpoint anger on an individual. And it sort of reduces the separatism, right? You go, this is an artifact of the system that we're all a part of.
Right.
The fact that I didn't fall into that trap and make a bunch of money and can tell college kids not to take a loan or they're an idiot, it's just luck.
Well, and then, so I'm not any of these things we've talked about in terms of an economist or a realtor or a banker or, so I don't, not like accounting. I don't have that expertise. I do not. And I don't pretend to. But the situation then is our hope is that we have to see that we are not against each other, whether you are a realtor, you are the banker benefiting from this. But just because it's like we just talked about. It's like, these people can be our friends. They're benefiting from a system that here's an example. It's like, so people, I do not have a problem with any one human that has been in the military. I am not against the people in the military. I am not for us exploiting the world, doing things we shouldn't do in other countries in the name of, money.
Yeah. Right.
Because that's what's happening. Like, and again, should we have ideally, we wouldn't need a military, but we do. Because we're not there yet. Okay.
Yeah.
But our military should be for protection, not for exploitation.
No, I follow you.
And that is actually, so Rob Bell writes a great book. It's called, oh my God. I think it's called Jesus Wants to Save Christians, which of course a lot of people would take offense to. And I'm not sure, Rob Bell would tell you that's a great title. I'm not sure that is a great title. But but what he talks about in that, and it's co-written with somebody else, is that the story of the Bible is that the oppressed people go to freedom, they get freedom, and they become the oppressor. Okay, and that's the United States, right?
Yeah.
So they traditionally, so we came to this country, and not even talking about the Native Americans here yet at all, because that's just not even go down that way. But let's just what happened from the
European.
majority of the immigrants coming here to escape whatever a better life, whatever, right? Some of them were religious because they escaped for religious reasons. Okay, and it is called Jesus Wants to Save Christians. It's by Rob Bell and Don Golden, and and then we over time grew, and now we've become the oppressor in the world, right? You know what I mean? Where we have the power to exploit people, and it's not just like directly exploiting people. You could think it's like it's the money made on military, and then when we get into these ridiculous conundrums where it's like, well, we gave money to the Iraqis and then or guns, and then they're shooting at us, so we're going to go over there. Like, what? Why did we give them guns in the first place? You know what I mean? Or because we sold them guns is what we did.
Yeah, because that just creates business.
It was money, right? Yeah, right. So we sell ourselves down the river on these things. But so that's like the cycle of this. But so the only way out is to not be attacking each other on the thing. We have to go, okay, so you are a banker, you are a whatever person, okay? Fine. And maybe and this is where with when fracking was a lot of the things, so they would be like, well, you're taking our jobs. Nobody did it. Nobody is against fracking. Nobody is against coal because they want you to lose your job.
Right.
That's not the question.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, is it as easy as that we can transition from coal? We've talked about this. I don't know. Again, because those things are complicated. But nobody wants you to lose your job. Right. That's not the goal. And because we have all the needs to meet.
We have to do it.
And then that's kind of the idea for welfare. Now, do people abuse the system? Yes, they do. Truly. And there's no doubt about that. But for the person, and I have friends that have benefited from unemployment systems and welfare systems.
I took unemployment after COVID and sold the brewery.
If it gets you to a place, so the problem, of course, is when it becomes a destination. But again, the people that are using it as a destination, that they are abusing the system, those are not your enemies either. Okay, they're loopholing the system just as the top end is loopholing the money system.
And thank goodness that people can find access to loopholes, because that is one of the fastest ways out of desperation.
Yep.
Right. I mean, if you're connected, and if you're well connected enough to be able to be exposed to the option of having a loophole, thank God.
So I think the only thing though that you have to constantly bring yourself back to then in these situations. We're not telling you to not be frustrated for all these variety of reasons. And it could be on whatever side of the coin you think you are. Besides the fact, first of all, don't think remember you're the whole coin. That's it. You are part of the whole coin, because without the other side of that coin, and it would just split into something else anyways. But that everybody at their essence, for lack of a better term, has a soul. And that is what you have to see in the person, is that soul. And they most likely, I'm not saying some people don't knowingly make bad decisions that are, well, I just said bad decisions. Some people make decisions knowingly exploiting people, but mostly that's not the way they think about their decisions.
Right.
Mostly,
right.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And that's the vast majority of people in the world are not doing that. And the only way out of it is we have to see the soul in the person. And this is why, so in my book I say, remove the labels.
Yeah, right.
All the labels. From titles like doctors
or banker,
or whatever,
real estate agent, or a college student, or
to broad-based groups like whatever religious affiliate you're with. Don't think of that. You can be that. That's fine. As we talked about, and especially if you've been led there correctly right, and not
Right, on
just
your own,
not just
free
doing it.
accord,
Yeah, right, yeah, especially that, and not just doing it because
But-
you think that's the thing to do, and you
Yeah,
say it
and most
because-
people that have done it that way are different, right? They're
Yes.
not
Yep.
as attached to the identity for the sake of the identity.
Yep, right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean that's unfortunate because that is where it starts, and that's just such a slow process. I mean, I'm already thinking like 3 steps down the line. Like, okay, well, what's next? Like, okay, we stop blaming each other for these problems. Then what?
Yeah,
Then
well, and that's where then individual expertise comes in.
Yeah.
Because first of all, you have to have individual expertise in subjects to help that.
Well, I mean, for me, it's this. Okay, let's go. What is it? It's the system. Okay, what's wrong with the system? Okay, well, how do we fix the system? And that line of thinking generally ends up being pretty frustrating because the system is designed to keep us out of it,
so
to keep us
strong.
from doing that.
Yeah, it's
and
so
so,
strong.
like,
Yeah.
how do we organize enough to?
Yeah,
make
well,
a
and that's
change.
why it just starts with yourself because, and I mean, when we talked about like if so, it's you or that it's like concentric circles.
Yeah,
Was it like
yeah.
Confucius talked about like you're the center.
Mm-hmm,
Okay.
Sure.
Now, if you want to tell me that God is the center, fair enough. Okay, because then it's also God would be the center, and God is the biggest of all the outside. There's
Yeah,
no
right.
outside of it. Okay.
And he's the whole thing.
Fair enough.
It's the
So
whole thing, right.
the next thing, no matter the
Yeah.
first thing or the next thing, at best, at worst, is you.
Yeah.
Okay, and then it's your immediate surrounding
Yeah.
family,
I mean, I look at
Right.
that. Yeah.
and then friends, right, and then however that goes out, like maybe your work
Coworkers or
circle.
like, yeah.
I mean, the people you interact at any of your kids playing sports this year.
I'm sure Elias is playing something.
So
Yeah, like your community, your town.
right.
your
The people you
village,
would just
your
interact,
city.
right? Yep. And you're going out, and then we get out to these different levels, and that's where you see that it's the one big whole, no matter what, because all these people in it, and everybody is your neighbor. Who's your neighbor? Like I mean, love thy neighbor is everybody.
Yeah.
That's who your neighbor
8
is.
billion neighbors.
Because it gets out to everybody eventually, and everything too, and that's the planet, and that's why I mean, from
Well,
the
and the
environmental
beauty of
perspective.
I mean, it's so funny because you really just got to flip this thing, reverse the entire role. Because if you think about it, if you really want to get something done, you've got 8 billion neighbors
Yep.
to help you fix the problem.
Well, and I think that's the beauty, right? That's the beauty of social media. Is
right.
what,
It
what
could
is
be
possible,
used for good
what
instead
it
of
could be
evil,
used
yeah.
for. Yeah, and that's why you got to stop fighting on that level.
Yeah.
That person, and chances are, I mean, how many people are fighting with bots? It's like
Oh,
really-
I would love for this Twitter thing with Elon Musk. Somebody actually, I mean, for me, what I noticed with that whole thing is that nobody wants to go there. Nobody wants to really figure out how much of social media isn't real
Yeah.
because they know it's 50% or more. I mean, that would be my guess. Like dating sites, Facebook, Twitter, it's all just made up stuff. Like even on Medium, which is a website for writers, and you have to pay to be a member. But even there, I see these articles with like 20 or 30 comments, and I swear they're bots.
Yeah.
But why would you have bots inside of a system that only people can pay for?
Yeah.
So that means somebody's paying for a bot, which again would drive their stats up,
Yep.
or whatever, and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
artificially
in the name
inflate
of-
their
Yeah,
worth.
Sure. And that, dude, when you think about that, so again, like the common daily interactions, I'm not saying like nobody has a problem with anybody on a daily basis in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was in Boone, North Carolina, where Appalachian State is yesterday, and I'm just watching people, and of course, a bustling college town, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just like everybody's getting along, and I'm sure there was some. I'm sure I can call the Boone Police Department and get the list of things that did happen
But
yesterday.
they're probably all just a bunch of silly.
But yeah, most of them are probably silly. Some minor things, and did some bad things happen. But the
Yeah.
vast majority of people. It's funny. My one memory on Facebook today came up because I've shared that before. Maybe I'll attach it to this video or something. But just the vast majority of people are getting along in a positive manner, or if at worst, just neutral interactions.
yeah,
and just
sure.
Abiding by rules that keep us alive. Like, I'm going to drive on the right side of the road.
I think about
today.
this every day.
Yep.
Like, why are we so willing to accept the fact that going maybe not on the interstate, but like on a non-divided highway, 2-lane highway, we're going 65 miles an hour, and everybody in the other direction is not coming over into our lane to run us off the road.
Right.
We trust that person. Every one of these people that goes by, we have this huge amount of trust for that or denial.
Yeah.
But I mean, somehow we're able to sort of all believe in that system that we're not going to kill each other. Why is it so difficult to translate that outside to some other?
Yeah. We do have a lot of trust there, and of course, and that's why then, because your trust is broken when somebody comes across a line and you're like, what the?
Yeah, right.
Right.
Well, that's.
But I mean, that happens, but that is still not the norm at all. Because I mean, think how many cars are on the road today, and I know there's tons of accidents. I know that,
but they're accidents for the most part. You don't see like, of course, they don't want to damage their vehicle. There's lots of other reasons why they wouldn't do that, but we have the capacity to love one another, and we do it every day. But we don't know we're doing it, and
and maybe none of that is, maybe that's all self-preservation. Fair enough, but by self-preserving yourself in that manner, is you're preserving other people.
Right.
Fair
it's
enough.
just not just because it's not immediate. And how do we teach that? Or well, I mean, I don't know if that's even.
Well, to probably wrap up there, the one thing I always think about too is because it's a level of development to a degree, because it's like I think about driving, like the whole idea of reverse the roles, which I talk about a lot, is like you're able to think about other people in some ways without doing it, in terms of like when you're a kid driving, it might be raining or getting dark, and I remember saying even like, well, I can still see, I don't need to turn my lights on. No. You probably can. Your lights are for the other people. Right? And then you just don't, until you get that, and maybe you do get that as a kid, or maybe it's like taught to you correctly. You know what I mean? But until you get that, you don't get that. You just don't, And
well, and I was just thinking the same thing, this empathy. I've always had it. I would to a detriment, and I would almost argue that my empathy has hindered my development in the system that we keep talking about. Like like my real estate, I could easily have followed a BlackRock model and tried to triple the rents and done all that stuff and take advantage of people and be like, no, I don't care that you got a new job and your check's 2 weeks delayed. Go prostitute yourself on the street. You're paying the rent on the first. There's plenty of those type of landlords, and they're the ones that are making money. They're the ones that are getting rich. They're the ones that are wearing 3-piece suits and whatever, and getting online and telling everybody how awesome they are. But I can't do that. I don't have that capacity. I mean, so part of the system is it selects for the lack of empathy. There's no incentive. There's no reward, and so it's a double-edged sword to play the money game, because the rewards that exist are anti-empathy. You couldn't set it up better. Right? You couldn't design a better system for bringing out the worst in people, and that sucks, because at the end of the day, I have a poor money mindset. Right? I think part of the whole money game is bad, and that's what's going to keep me poor. And if you read any money advice, they're like, you got to stop doing that. You got to embrace the abundant money mindset.
And I guess it's just there of knowing though that it's just like there's more to it, and there's more like, what are we capable of?
Right.
What I mean?
Exactly.
And so
I just adhere to a different.
And so because you're able to put yourself in the situation of the other person, which again, I mean, you get in because of society. Like, you can't necessarily just give. You don't have the capacity to give the person the place to stay. You don't have that kind of money. Where some people would have that kind of money. Like, here, you can literally just.
I mean,
and I'm not saying that that's what we should be,
right?
But like, I mean, in the world of like things being fair, and again, if you didn't have to pay the exorbitant insurance,
the system, right?
The system,
the higher level issues.
Could those people pay less to you? Yes, they could.
And truthfully, I would look at the profit margin and go, ooh, that's too much. I get to reduce the rent. Sweet. I would. I'm not, but I don't know that mechanism is built into capitalism. It's sort of like people that keep talking about the price correcting itself, especially home prices correcting itself. And I'm like, why? What is the incentive to lower any of the prices that have increased right now? Like I went and got Kathleen does most of the grocery shopping. I'm very lucky, but I went and I bought a tub of butter, and it was $7.99, and I was floored. I mean, I don't know. It used to be like $3.99.
Yeah, I don't even
doubled
know,
in
right?
doubled in price because of COVID. So that hits home, right? I know prices are going up. I'm lucky and entitled and all that stuff. I don't have to deal with a whole lot of that. But then I'm like, well, why would this ever go back down? Now there's plenty of butter on the shelves. Everybody's walking out the door with an $8
right.
tub of butter.
Why would it go down?
What incentive
Why
does
would it?
anything involved in any of this have to lower that price?
Yeah.
The only way the prices go down is if people have the luxury of deciding not to buy it. And so what we're seeing with college is that students don't have the luxury of not going to school because they're not going to get a job, or they're going to be forced to figure out how to create a new pathway, which is daunting for an 18-year-old. So they're desperate again, and the price isn't going to come down because I mean it's like we've got guns to our heads. Our backs are up against the wall with housing and college and probably a lot of other things. And like you would say, that's existed all over the world in many different ways in cultures and societies that are far less lucky than us every day. This is a problem.
Sure.
So it's easy
it's
to
just
understand.
increased in degree.
So when somebody then tells somebody, like, one time I remember, this is exactly the same thing. I was getting harassed. I was probably 13 and just gone through a growth spurt, super awkward, hanging out with my buddy who was like 10. I mean, that's kind of how I was, right? I was still a 10-year-old. The like juniors in high school or whatever were like getting ready to thrash us, right? And this guy came up to me and put his hands around my neck and was like squeezing, and all his buddies were laughing. And I'm like on my bike, like, what's going to happen? And a mom walked by with her probably like 4-year-old kid or whatever. And the guy, of course, sees her and lets us go and acts like everything's fine. And I like turn around and let him have it. I cussed him out. And the woman comes up to me and goes, "You shouldn't talk like that around my son. You shouldn't use language like that." And I'm like, did you not just see what went down? You don't have any empathy or forgiveness or a hug maybe for what just happened to me? And that's what we're doing when we're telling a college kid, if you can't pay for your major, you're an idiot.
Right.
So there's a lot of anger there.
Yeah.
For that side. I mean, that's terrible. What are your thoughts on that? Like, what?
Yeah, well, and I mean, so where's that? I mean, it's rooted in some sort of feeling for them, right? You know what I mean?
This empathy thing. Like, you either got it or you don't.
Yeah, and right. So in lack, they it's like they're, gosh, you know what? Let's see. So they.
Like, what's the appropriate way to treat somebody who's desperate, or being like in the process of getting assaulted? Maybe first you have to see it that way.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So for you there too, then the kid it was the kid's mother that saw that.
No, it wasn't the bully's mother. It was a different, like a third party, right? Just happened to be in this public area.
But I mean, that's when the kid.
But she did. Yeah, she saw it all go down, and instead of coming up while it was happening and telling those kids to leave me alone, she ignored all that because she didn't want to deal with it. But then it was okay to then bully my potty mouth, which granted, I mean, I probably said a bunch of Eddie Murphy, Red Fox type stuff to this kid at the top of my lungs to get back.
Well, and I mean, of course you'd be, but see, that's, I mean, because we're not taught, period, of how to, like handle people. You know what I mean? We don't do a good job of it at all.
But I don't think anybody would argue.
You would have been clearly scared at that point. You know what I mean? Like, so you, like, the flight or fight mode or freeze, you froze, right? Because of a lack of a choice. You couldn't run or fight. Yeah. Like, you knew you couldn't beat the kid. He has his hands around your neck, so you can't flee.
And he's twice as big as me.
Right. So now you're there, right? And now, I mean, you obviously kind of get a little bit of empowerment because he does let go.
He was and went behind the fence. Yeah, right. Yeah. And I knew she was there too.
Yeah.
I'm no better than him, I guess, at some point, but at the same time, like, who's going to call that out?
Yeah, well, it's just so goofy because it's like, well, why did that kid feel that he should You know,
Well, that's a whole nother story.
There's a certain degree of like, okay, if you guys were the same size, and I'm not.
And I called his girlfriend a name.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys are the same size and you're kind of having it out at that age, maybe it should be.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not condoning violence, but when why does anybody think it's okay to pick on somebody smaller in whatever smaller that is? Mm-hmm. Right? You know what I mean? Taking advantage.
Yeah, like you said, we just don't know how to really navigate those situations from any of those positions.
Yeah. And then how was that passed down? Because it's a situation where that kid is at home with his stepfather's hands around his neck or whatever. You know what I mean? And or like who was the 13-year-old that had their hands on his neck when he was 10?
Yeah. Well,
or whatever.
Yeah. But I mean, in the context of what's happening in social media, because isn't that kind of like the same thing, this like triangle of everybody being wrong and just like continually spouting wrongisms at one another? Like, where's the ref? Or like, how do we self-regulate that? And I think, like you said, the beginning is just to sort of your book, right? Is to stop and look at the signifier and what the words mean and release the message and reverse the roles and do these things. But if only one person in that social media triangle or in the argument about student loans is willing to do that, then they, like my empathy example, they lose.
Yep.
You lose all power if you're the one that's like trying to do things the right way. And so it perpetuates itself.
Sure. Yeah. But again, so it always just comes down to like that you just have to start with yourself and do what you can do. And I mean, I would recommend not engaging in these barroom brawls of comment sections.
But I mean, in order for things to get better, and this is like so like dystopian, I hate to even keep going there. It's almost like I feel there is a need to like, I don't know.
Well, I think on the comment section, just so much is lost in body language, communication, and then like it's so hard, even just in texting. It is so hard to communicate appropriately with that because it's like somebody can rattle off 20 things, and you're like, all right, let's go back to line 1.
Right, but not to push back on that. But if that is the way that our discourse is going to happen from here on out, wishing that it could happen in public or whatever. To allow for the nuances to enter the equation. If that's never going to happen, how is me simply like avoiding it? Because I've gotten off of social media for all these reasons. But something you said earlier made me think maybe that's
because the power of what's capable there.
Yeah, but like you said, because there is power of good, right? Of good things. So maybe I'm putting my head in the sand, and just pretending that I can not participate in it. That's some part of the solution. But in fact, I'm not really contributing.
I mean, I think that's why. I mean, so social media. I mean, you can put. If you are the one posting and putting information out there, and it's, for a lack of a better term, true and has some value, that's what you put out. Whereas it's so easy for someone to immediately feel attacked when you go against what somebody says, and it's
as a response.
Just so difficult to set the lines of, okay, let's talk about these aspects of this first. Like,
right.
Hey man, I see you're frustrated because of this, like, and I understand your frustration, but tell me more about, and that's not the way social media works.
Right.
And so to me, that's why, social media didn't exist. Now, talk radio did. Was that original comment sections where people would get on and rattle off, kind of things? I always wonder about that. You know what I mean? Like, was that kind of original comment sections?
And surely like, it probably radio goes back even further than that, like public meetings.
Yeah.
Because those were real things. Anytime the government did anything, they've got to hold a public meeting and people could get up and say whatever.
But again, it's just such a different atmosphere of like what you can say. And I mean, let's just be honest. I'm sure that there was a certain time some people would say this is the way it should be, which I disagree with strongly, but be like, well, let's go settle this outside.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know, it's just like,
but
well,
what I've heard about those things is they're actually not that scary because people would self-regulate. They wouldn't get up once they're in front of that microphone and that podium in front of all those people.
Yeah.
They don't go off.
yep.
They actually introduce some level.
Yeah, and so, dude, I just think, I mean, it's just you come back, okay, to what can you control, and this is the thing, and so yes, yeah, because I talk about this in my book, but like when Harry Met Sally, when he finally realized he wants to be with her, he's like, when you know what you want for the rest of your life, you want the rest of your life to start right now. Well, when you see a different way to be in the world, that is what is possible. Like, let's make this place, because Earth, metaphorically speaking, is heaven and hell. Why do we let hell exist?
Well, yeah, like you always say, why would you choose an option that you know is wrong?
But yeah, and so when you start there, it's only you and your perspective that can do it, and the straight one-on-one comments on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, whatever. I think Instagram stays pretty clean still, but I'm sure some people have problems there. But that, you know what I mean, is it worth engaging and using your vital energy there in a one-on-one or small group comment section? I do find value personally in making posts of like, I'm putting this out there.
Yeah, to balance
and this is the truth, and you know what I mean, and you know, if people don't find value in that, or well, for one, so for me, I've also come like, well, show me where I am wrong.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and correct me. And so if somebody can make a comment that's worth it, I certainly would consider it and go, oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, so I can grow. But that's why, you know, I mean, to me, even on almost any of these issues, I'm not going to tell people what to. Well, you should be for or against a $10,000.
Yeah.
Listen, I don't know. It's so complicated in your personal situation and everybody else's personal situation and the government's role and all this systemic stuff.
And what layer we're talking about.
Yeah,
and like where we're even talking about the same thing.
But we can talk about how to think about it, and it starts with you, and then what can you do? And that's where you've got to get back to. And then it's within your means, because if you are the economist expert or you are the whatever expert, the environmental, like I have ideas of how to make a car that doesn't use lithium or gas. Okay, let's get you rolling. You know what I mean? You know, but I mean, not everybody, of course, has that.
Yeah.
That thing, which then just goes back. We'll end here. This will be good. It goes back to Ren learning. Is she, at this point, you're just exposing her to as much broad-based, basic information as possible, right? And then if she has an interest in one, you don't stop all the others. You still, at this point, share this other development. But there's nothing wrong with letting her go a little bit more, right? And so if it's just like this spectrum, it's like, okay, math, history, language arts, handwriting, blah blah blah, you know, and it's just, and art and music and whatever, that whole spectrum. Okay,
just physical.
And it's just like, she's like, wow, you just see like, man, she's good.
Yeah, right.
You know, and she loves it, and man, she sits down at the piano and has like this kind of weird natural like inclination towards. You still got to learn the natural, and like she starts going with it. Well, you don't just go like, oh, we're never doing math again.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. Totally.
But ultimately, maybe you let her go that way, and that is what the schooling should have been, right? That's what
and that's the beauty of homeschool is you were allowed to. Because how do you do that with 40 students? Right. You can't go 40 different directions.
You can't. And that's why, and then that's why we get skewed with grades, because it's like,
don't even start with the grades.
this kid's getting, maybe we should talk about grades next time, but so.